So, I got a call from my cousin one time who said that he, his brother, his dad and his best friend were using an Ouija board in their basement. Prior to starting, they took a large porcelain doll out of the room because it was as creepy as hell, and then they placed it in the adjacent room face down on a pile of towels. My cousin took a short break because the board started spouting out nonsense, so he went for a toilet break. His dad and brother and friend started asking the board questions without him. One of the questions was, who is in the other room? It just started spouting out random numbers, and when my cousin came back into the room, his brother said that it wasn't working and that they were going to put the board away, and they showed him the answer to the question he just asked. When he saw the answers to the question, his face absolutely dropped, and he said, "Dude, that's my national security number." They then started to talk whatever this thing was, and it told my cousin that he would die in the Air Force. At this point, they start to tell the entity they are communicating with to prove itself. It then spelled out the word doll, and they were like, oh my god, what the actual fuck? They opened the door to check on the porcelain doll that they had laid in the other room, and when they opened the door, the doll was standing upright in front of the door, staring right at them. Everybody freaked and ran out of the house. His best friend burned the Ouija board, and I think he temporarily went nuts for a few months. My cousin, for some reason, then joined the Air Force, and is now on a base in Europe. I was about 12 or 13, spending a night at a friend's house, goofing around with the Ouija board with him and his sister. We were getting all sorts of gibberish back, just kind of scaring ourselves for fun and not taking it very seriously. When we got the message, "I can see you through the window," and then "I can see you through his eyes," or something like that. There was just a small window in the basement room where we were, and just the backyard and woods past the driveway visible through that window. We asked it a few more questions, and it said I'm under the car, so we somehow got up the nerve to go out with a flashlight and peer under the car, where we saw a big huge black cat. It was just standing there hissing at us. We ran inside freaking out, and at that exact moment the power failed and all the lights in the house went out. We just about actually shit ourselves. A few minutes later the power came back on. We all sat up until dawn that night scared, and we never played with the Ouija board again. My friend and I were about 14 or 15. She had an Ouija board that we quite often used. I thought she was pushing it for the fun factor, and I never took it too seriously. One night we started, and it was about 9 p.m. We started getting some very strange sayings, none of them I can remember 27 years later. And we got a name, although the name I've forgotten over the years. It said it was from Malaysia. He was there to protect us, I do remember that much. The next thing we know is 7 a.m. It was like we blinked and the sun was up. It was very freaky. We were just sitting there at the table staring at each other like what the fuck just happened there. Too bad we didn't have a third person to tell us. She would never use it again. I did, but I never had that happen to me again. About 15 years ago, my sisters had some friends over one night. They were in the basement watching some scary movie. They had an Ouija board. They started cussing at it and calling it shit and fucking fake. They began watching a movie. All of a sudden, all of the lights and the electricity goes out. They start screaming, then the TV comes back on, all static and is blurring noise. They were yelling and crying. Then the TV shuts off and comes back on to a black screen. The words, "This is not a game anymore," roll across the screen, in white. After the TV shuts off and they are in complete darkness, they run out the house. Afterwards, they go back in the house and our dog hid, and when they found it, all it did was bark and look very angry at them. So I was at a friend's house and we all asked it a question only the person asking would know the answer to. It would answer the questions. One question that somebody asked was, what was the name of the boat I went on a cruise when I was 6? And it answered. We played with this thing forever. We had a couple of cold spot experiences and would place a candle where the cold spot was and the candle would burn sideways, not straight up and down. One night we all asked it how long we had left to live, and this is where it gets really scary. Everybody asked and they had 50 to 60 years. I go to ask and it says 10. I asked 10 years and it says 10 days. I pretty much shit a brick at this point. It said I was going to be killed in a car crash by a girl named Emma. We would ask it 3 days later and it would say I had 7 days left. Ask it 2 days later and it would say I had 5 days left, and so on. I'm freaking out at this point, carrying a Bible in my pocket and wearing a big cross. I finally tell my dad and he doesn't believe me, so I made one out of a piece of paper and used a CD to show him. It worked and he flipped out and told me that I didn't have to go to school the day I was supposed to die. I didn't go into school and thankfully nothing happened. I have no evidence and I don't care if you believe me or not. I've actually used a board with results and let something into my home and have been physically assaulted by this entity. It started out with that feeling like you're being watched and doors closing and footsteps on the hardwood floor when you're at home alone, and progressed slowly into being kept awake by something shaking the bed or pulling off your covers, sometimes even whispering your name. The board would disappear for days on end, then show up in places you would never have put it. Then it was like a black mass in the corner of the room, or a shadow of a man watching you from the doorway. After that, it escalated pretty quickly. I had my hair pulled, fingers pricked, scratched, choked. I've even been held down in bed while this thing whispered in my ear in only what could have been Latin. We had our house blessed after this and the bad thing hasn't shown back up, just the normal occurrences now and then. But I will never again play with one of those boards, they are dangerous.